Okay, welcome to this week's Chen Chat. So the date today, what is the date today? 20th of October. So we're heading towards Halloween, basically, just over a week's time. That'll be interesting. So what we're going to talk about this week. So this week we've got an interesting conversation, something that's probably going to be quite interesting to most people, really, because it is very relative. So we're going to talk about clickbait, effectively. So clickbait from a social media perspective, really. I suppose any other type of marketing or media to a certain degree. And also consciousness. Where does clickbait and consciousness come in, and how do we kind of connect these things together effectively from a spiritual perspective into our kind of day-to-day life? So hopefully you guys can hear me okay. I think last week I was on mute for a bit and there was a microphone problem. So this week we're hoping everything's good to go. So we're going to wait for Jayne to give me the nod from downstairs that all is good. Sound check, I think, as we generally call it. So it's good to have you here, Thet. I'm glad you've been waiting. Probably at the time's right, of course, is always the thing, isn't it, really? Lots of people are in different parts of the world. And we're very aware that our audience really is kind of global. So there are lots of different people in different places, in different times. For some people, it's the morning. And for other people, of course, it's the evening. And obviously for us, it's kind of the evening UK. It's kind of 7 p.m. our time. Jayne's given me an okay from a sound check perspective. So that means we can proceed, really, with this week's conversation. So I think from my perspective, really, sort of welcome to everybody for another episode of Chen Chat. So this is our weekly Chen Chat. We've moved the time to 7 p.m. because we kind of figured more people probably could make that time. And it works from our scheduling perspective as well, which obviously is good. So today's topic is one that affects every one of us, I guess, really, whether we realize it or not. So kind of clickbait and consciousness. So two things that we hear lots about, two things I guess we don't really talk about probably maybe as often as we should do, I guess. So now really from my perspective, so you might think that clickbait is just a bit of kind of digital marketing trickery. It's the way I tend to think about things. So kind of those attention grabbing headlines that we know make you click kind of before you think, really. And I guess that is the idea. But from an energetic and a spiritual perspective, it runs much deeper than that, really. So if we think about things from a spiritual perspective, our attention is energy, it's currency. So wherever we focus our thought, our energy, our focus, that's where energy flows. So when we place it, energy goes in that direction, basically. So if we ask the question then, so what happens when we continually hand that energy over to kind of computer algorithms that are designed to distract, provoke us, and polarize us in different ways? It's a really good question. And the more I was thinking about it before this episode, I thought it's really interesting to kind of consider what does happen when we continually surf social media and continually scroll through social media posts. So that's what we're going to explore today, basically, is the psychology and I guess the spiritual implications of living in a world that is constantly competing, really, for our conscious awareness, our spiritual consciousness. So clickbait, really, what is clickbait? So I really didn't have an idea until years ago. I used to hear people talking about clickbait. I didn't really kind of put too much effort and time into finding out what that meant. But really, clickbait, I guess, if we look at it from a kind of cohesive perspective, is any form of content, usually is a headline, basically a thumbnail or a short video. And that video or that content is specifically designed to trigger an emotional response that's strong enough that we can't resist clicking. I mean, that is clickbait, isn't it? So you see a headline and you only get the kind of snippet, and it kind of pushes a button basically in our conscious awareness. And we look at that button, and then we decide, are we going to click that clickbait and see where it goes? And we know generally that when we click the button or we click the link, generally as it is, we kind of know in our intuition that it's not really going to give us what we're expecting, because the headline is designed to trigger us. So we kind of know that we're going to click something and we're going to go somewhere to a page, or we're going to view a social media post or some other type of sort of marketing that's probably not going to be what it said it was in the kind of subject headline. So this clickbait really, it works by hijacking the brain's reward and fear system, I think, using language and imagery really that makes us feel like we need to know more. And that is the key. So people that write social media posts, which we do, everyone's writing social media posts, we're all kind of competing for people's attention, I guess, on social media and generally websites, marketing. So basically we kind of think about the reward and the fear concept of a line. So things like classic clickbait would be, you won't believe what happened next. And you know that when you click it, you're probably not going to see what you see in the picture. So the picture is showing you, like a shark attacking someone on a boat or something. You won't believe what happened next. We click on the link and we don't get to see a shark attacking a boat at all, even though that was the part that we were looking for. Or things like doctors are shocked by this discovery. So again, it's a health-related subject line designed to push that button about, what have doctors found that I might need to know to keep my health good? So that's a classic one. I've seen that quite a lot myself. And of course, she opened the door and froze. So there's three. I did a bit of research earlier just on clickbait, and that was three that I found quite a lot coming up. Those three kind of concepts. You won't believe what happened next. Doctors are shocked by this discovery, and she opened the door and froze. Now, all three of them, you can see, are kind of quite clever. They're very short, to the point. All of them are kind of tapping into that kind of intuitive part of us where we want to find these things out. So basically, they're creating like this open kind of cognitive loop, really, a feeling of kind of, I suppose, curiosity, really. And we know that our brains don't like curiosity. We're kind of, as human beings, we're designed to find things out. We like to find things out. We like to do research. We obviously like to travel. We like to do those sorts of things. So we kind of know that from our perspective, we are quite curious, quite a curious species, I guess, from that perspective. And we know that clicking gives us that kind of reward, the kind of almost like the dopamine that you'd get from drugs, that kind of momentary tension release. So this is what the whole thing is designed to do. Clickbait is all about finding that trigger, creating that emotional response, and then creating that kind of reward and resolving the tension that's being built up, really. So from a psychological perspective, I guess there's three things that we can think about. Clickbait is powered by three psychological buttons or levers or subjects. So we kind of got the curiosity aspect, which is what I find myself looking at. It gives you just enough information to make you think, I wonder, but you don't really get satisfied with the tagline. So the brain fills the gap, so we click it to close it, basically. And I think curiosity is one of the key loops there, really. Then we think about like the emotional trigger. So again, fear is obviously a driving factor, and we know this is what the mainstream do. Everything they do is basically subject line fear-based. So normally about your health or your money or the fact that the world's about to end seems to be in the news just about every day in terms of wars in different parts of the world. So emotional triggers are another form of a very valid clickbait. And they kind of create this fear, the outrage, the surprise, and then they try to put the validation into that kind of emotional brain aspect, really, into the action before logic can intervene. So they want you clicking because you've got that kind of surprise or outrage to the actual subject line. So you've already clicked on it before your brain's had time to think, this is clickbait. I'm not going to kind of get to see what I think I would see. And then I guess you've got the reward aspect. Everything is a loop, basically. So we need that kind of dopamine hit that we get when we see things that are interesting. So platforms are learning what triggers us, what triggers you, what triggers me, and feeds you more of it. So we've got these very clever social media platforms now with these ultra clever algorithms that are running behind the scenes. And they're all about basically triggering your nervous system, effectively almost like a slot machine to a certain degree, keep putting more in. So over time, we're not really choosing consciously. Our attention is being conditioned by these social media algorithms and these marketing algorithms. So again, we talk about algorithms. Probably 5 years ago, most people had no idea what an algorithm was, really. If you ask people, what's an algorithm? Only those people in IT would probably be able to tell you effectively. But now we know that, TikTok, YouTube, all the news platforms, most media, social media and normal media use kind of engagement-based algorithms. So it's content where it keeps you watching or clicking. And the more people watch and click, the more it gets shown to more people. So there's an emotional content aspect to this effectively, because of course the content that performs the most is the ones that gets you hooked. But this tends to be the most controversial content on the platforms. So again, we're in the same position ourselves. We create content. We've got Chen's content, the things that we do. We're trying to kind of help people, teach people about spiritual protection, spiritual development, but we're trying to do it in a way of integrity without using clickbait effectively. And of course, we're then competing with these controversial content algorithms on these platforms where people are continually being drawn to the things that have the big headlines, but of course they're generally the useless, dead information that is no good to you particularly. So that feedback loop really creates a kind of attention economy is the way I like to see it. So your focus is the product of the economy, of the social media and news platforms. And the more energy that's pulled into the reaction, of course, the more valuable you become to the algorithm, because the algorithm is looking for attention, for clicks. So the more content that's put out there that gets more clicks with more controversial content, then of course the algorithm's going to be pushing more of that content to more people, which of course might not be very beneficial to most people. And it's probably not really, if you think about what we get to see. How much stuff do you actually see on social media that you learn something from, that's engaging, that's positive, that comes from a kind of truthful and integrity perspective? I don't see much. Most of it's just general dross, basically. And you kind of wonder why your finger's moving, because your finger's moving because you're not seeing anything of interest. So you keep swiping because you think the next post, certainly on TikTok and things, the next post might be more interesting, the one you've just looked at. And of course, you watch people, if you use public transport, you watch people in front of you in the seats and their fingers just moving continually. They're not even reading or absorbing any content. It's like a 2-second, a video starts to play, it's a person talking. Basically, most people don't even listen to the first 4 or 5 words and they flipped on to the next one. So it's this kind of like very subversive method of basically dragging your attention away from the interesting things that we should be interested in, things that we should be talking about, to things that aren't interesting, basically. So I guess from a spiritual perspective, clickbait isn't really just about psychological manipulation. It's kind of energetic interference, because we know that what we allow into our field, we connect with. So if we sit and watch a horror film, we're going to go into a state of fear. That fear is going to manipulate our energy stream and bring us down energetically to a lower frequency. And as our energetic stream comes down through fear, our emotional centers get triggered. And then, of course, we become clickbait effectively for other astral entities that exist in that low frequency. So when we start to do things that put us in a state of fear, we're actually moving ourselves into a place that we don't wish to be. We're bringing our frequency down. We're bringing our energy down. Our adrenaline starts to flow. That creates fear. And of course, we're sort of basically looping on that whole cycle, which we don't want to do. We want to be high vibration, positive, staying out of fear, out of manipulation, keeping our emotional frequency controlled and protected. So that's where most people would be looking to be if you're looking to have a kind of positive day, to stay away from chaos, away from negativity. But effectively, obviously, these social media platforms effectively kind of, driving that kind of negative content, really, for the most part. I mean, there is obviously positive content on social media, but you do need to go and find it. Of course, it's not going to come to you. And we know that with these computer algorithms, we have to type in the things we want. So if we go to the search bar, whatever we type in the search bar, if we type in fishing, we get to see fishing content. If we type in lipstick, we get to see lipstick content. So we kind of drive our algorithm, but most people forget that these computer programs need to be trained on what you want to see. So if you want to see certain content, you need to go to the search bar and type in the things you want, and you'll get more of those things. And of course, when you see content that you don't want to see, the key is not to click it, not to give it any time and attention. And then, of course, the algorithm learns very quickly that this content is negative content to you. It's of no interest. And of course, in theory, will provide you less of that content. So we do need to kind of learn to manipulate our own conscious awareness with these algorithms and drive the computer aspect of it, the IT aspect of it, to the things that we want to see, really. So we think about it, every click really is is a kind of thread of consciousness, a small agreement of focus. If we click somewhere, we're agreeing that we want to see that. We're going to focus on it for a very short period of time. And as they always say, where the attention goes, energy flows. So what you put your attention into, you're going to basically get to see. So when our attention's scattered, our light effectively fragments too, of course. So clickbait kind of works really by hooking into those lower kind of emotional frequencies that we're all aware of, sort of fear, outrage, curiosity, we talked about that earlier, and validation to a certain degree, and then pulling us out of our present awareness. And of course, this is where we're powerful people. We're all spiritual energies. We're very powerful when we're aware and when we're intuitive and we're connected to our guides, spirit guides, and when we're working with our own intuition, we become very powerful. But of course, social media and all of the clickbait items pull us away from that awareness, basically. So we're kind of removing our power, in my opinion, and obviously feeding collective energetic fields that thrive on distraction and polarity. So that's the other thing that's kind of going on behind the scenes. These energies are negative, they're thriving on chaos and distraction, and of course they're pulling people into that frequency, which is where we don't really wish to be. So I think we need to be very discerning about our energetic protection when we're doing things online. And every time we pause before we click, we can do a breath, we can think about things consciously, we can kind of reclaim our own energy and strength, and which brings us back to a sovereign perspective, which of course is what we're talking about and what we need to be, really. So I guess really to round up my kind of part of this conversation before we get Chen in, to stay sovereign in a clickbait world is the key, effectively. So clickbait is working by hooking those lower frequencies, our emotions, and scattering our light into kind of these reactive, receptive thought loops. And our awareness and our intuition breaks the spell. So we can pause, we can stop from it, we can breathe, we can kind of think to ourselves, is this uplifting me, or am I being drained by this content? And we all do it. I do it as much as everybody else. I sit there for 10, 15 minutes and Jayne says, why are you just scrolling aimlessly? And you think to yourself, I don't know, I haven't seen anything interesting yet at all. But of course, because we use social media for our business, as well as most people, you have to be on social media to understand how it's working, to look at the posts that you do, to look at the feedback and the likes and the kind of, the audience that we're working with and clicking to. Because of course, we run our business the same as every other business. It's a kind of finance-based business. So obviously we're creating a product, which is our kind of work, our knowledge, our work with Chen, our clearings, our resin, the products that we make. We're selling those products to people that are interested in their own spiritual development and sovereignty, and same with our courses, obviously. And then effectively, of course, there is a two-way exchange of energy. So effectively, you have to kind of be in the game to be able to do the work that you do. But of course, it's very difficult to try and be in the space and do things in a way that you hold your integrity. And that's the key for us, really. We're always thinking about the way that we advertise, the things that we say, the things that we do, because we're maintaining our spiritual sovereignty and therefore our own integrity amongst the kind of, crocodiles of the social media, of the politics, of the finance system, of all the other entities that are in these places that obviously are manipulating everyone from a kind of thought perspective and a clickbait perspective. So if you're posting really good, positive content, it's very hard to get your positive content to the top of people's feeds when all the negative content is the clickbait content that people are clicking on continually. Of course, that content is the content that's driving the algorithms. So you can see from a kind of business perspective, it's quite a difficult challenge to produce good, positive content that's helpful to people, or certainly those people that are interested, but to actually get your content to people, really. And we've kind of worked out from our perspective, I think now really, that most content only gets to people if you pay for it, basically. So if you boost a post and you put some money behind the post, Facebook will push the post out to more people. But you could have written the best post in the world that's really positive, high vibe, high integrity, useful to people, things people want to read and hear. But effectively, Facebook algorithms are going to hold back that post if people aren't commenting and liking, which of course people generally don't do on positive posts. So if someone said the world's ending tomorrow, that post would kind of go viral in 5 minutes, and everybody would be liking the post and everybody would share it to their friends and tagging people. But if you put a post out saying, the world's frequency's just gone up by 500% and everyone feels happier, that post probably wouldn't get many likes, probably wouldn't get shared. People probably wouldn't be tagging other people on it at all. So you can see it's quite a difficult challenge to create positive content and get it out there. And as I say, that's what I think these algorithms have got to the point that basically if you want your content to be pushed to people, then you have to pay for it effectively, which of course is a business decision. And I think I was reading somewhere a little while back, really. I know, obviously, we work with a lot of practitioners. We train a lot of practitioners with SRA, myself and Jono, and lots of those practitioners do the training. And then, of course, they've got the challenge of basically creating or building themselves a website and a business, a social media platform to be able to market themselves to do the work. And of course, this is the harder part, really. Sometimes the easy part is being trained and being good at what you do, but to get out to people and let people know, then of course that can be the more tricky bit. I think John made me laugh actually on Thursday when we were in the office. He said we were talking about this whole concept, and he said one of the things that was quite funny. He said you can make the best lemonade on the street, but if nobody knows you're selling it, you don't sell any, basically. And that kind of very short statement from Jono kind of encapsulates this whole conversation, that trying to get good information to people in this kind of algorithm-based social media platform thread can be quite tricky. Okay, so I think from my perspective, that sort of covers what clickbait is from my perspective, and the kind of consciousness conversation, how we do things consciously, how we kind of disengage with things consciously that we're not interested in, and how we just engage with the things that we are interested in. And that, I think, is what everyone kind of needs to do. Hi to Nicole, good to have you here and listening. Hopefully you're enjoying the chats. We're talking clickbait, we're talking conscious awareness, we're talking about trying to keep your vibration and energy high in this kind of social media kind of playing field of algorithms that are kind of pushing negative clickbait type content, basically. And I think we're kind of doing quite a good job to kind of explain where we are from that perspective. And I think it's good that we're also in that same space where, quite often we're talking about things that we haven't experienced. And yet I think most people understand this conversation, certainly from a social media perspective, because everyone's on social media. So that, for me 2 or 3 years ago, Facebook was actually quite good. A lot of the content I used to see on my Facebook feed was really interesting. Now it's basically not interesting, or adverts. So it's just advert, some content that's probably not that interesting, advert, a bit more content that's not that interesting. So, again, if you go back in time, I remember Jayne saying back in time, maybe 2 or 3 years ago, she used to see all of her friends' feeds on Facebook continually. So she knew what her friends were doing in different places in the country, and she was kind of catching up and watching that happening all the time. Whereas nowadays, she said, I don't ever see any feeds from my friends anymore. All I see is adverts all day, or content from people I don't even know, which I think is the other odd thing, because obviously that was the whole point of Facebook back in the day, is that you actually, you made friends with people, or you added friends, and then of course you got to see what they were doing and where they lived in the world, and they got to see what you were doing. So it was this kind of reciprocal arrangement energetically, really, whereas now that seems to have kind of disappeared. I guess it'd be interesting for you guys to put up your opinions in the chat. What have you noticed using social media? How do you feel when you're on? Do you feel drained after an hour of scrolling and moving through? Do you find any of the information interesting? Are you having to work the social media algorithm? So are you continually typing in search phrases and patterns of things that you want, so you can train this algorithm to give you what you want? Or do you just kind of spend, the rest of us really, most of your time looking at stuff that is effectively of no interest whatsoever? So that'll be quite good. Nicole saying she gets sucked in. Well, I think we all get sucked in, Nicole. That is the problem, really. But of course, it is that thing. You get sucked in because you're expecting to see something interesting, and there might be something interesting coming. And that, of course, is the key, I think, really, is that we're all in that space that we expect at some point to get something that we're actually wanting to see. Okay, so let's get Chen in to see what his opinion is. Nicole saying she's did a Facebook challenge post a day once a day. I would find myself there doom scrolling. Yes, exactly. Doom scrolling is about right, really. And again, there's lots of groups on there. There's lots of preppers groups and people think the world's ending. And you've got, there's a lot of religious groups. There's lots of people talking about some pretty negative things, really. And you think, wow, it's like, why would you want to spend your time living in that negative space where you must go to bed at night completely tired, drained, emotionally, sort of physically fatigued and drained just by the kind of information that you've been reading, and probably a little bit worried and anxious as well. And I guess this is probably where a lot of people, maybe teenagers and youngsters, have found themselves in this anxious state. We've never worked on so many people that have anxiety as their number one thing. So when we look at our clearings that we do, we obviously can work through spreadsheets and obviously pull the information. And anxiety is one of the top things, and certainly a lot of teenagers. And I don't remember when I was 17, 18, 19, I don't remember even knowing what anxiety was, let alone having it. We were sort of pushed out the door by parents, told to come home when it got dark, basically thrown out with a football and some sandwiches and a drink, and that was it. It was like, don't come back, go and find something to do, effectively. But, myself and all the people that I mixed with, all my mates and stuff, none of us had anxiety. I mean, it was not a thing. But now I'm pretty sure anxiety is coming from social media. So the more time people spend on social media, the more negative they think their own life is, the more things they think are happening in the world that they're not involved in or can't afford to buy, clothes, gadgets, all the normal things that drive in marketing, really. And I guess that kind of does drive that very negative, people sit back and think, poor old me. I don't have the money, I don't have the resources, I don't have the best clothes, I don't have the nicest shoes, I don't have the best, handbags, products, cars, everything compared to other people, because social media is this kind of, it's like an unethical playground, really, because people only show the version of things that are happening in their life that are good. No one puts on the fact they're having a bad day or things aren't so good, or they went out for a meal and the meal wasn't particularly good. Everyone's just posting the best things that they do. So it kind of looks like everyone's having this wonderful life. And we know, of course, that's not actually the case. Most people are not having a wonderful life. Most people are struggling to keep their head above water and to go about their day, get home tired, fatigued, have tea, watch a bit of TV and go to bed, generally. So I think that the social media kind of view of the world is so off balance against what is reality. And unfortunately, the youngsters, the teenagers and the younger people coming in that have only ever played with social media are in that space that I guess they're being kind of drained by the system, really. So Tracy's just saying that she feels drained. I try not to click on clickbait now and be conscious of it, which I think is the key, Tracy. That is the thing. We don't realise we've clicked on it before we've clicked on it. You see like a headline, world's ending, and you've clicked on it to find out why the world's ending, and then you realise it's not ending. It was just something to get your attention, basically, and then generally sell you something else. So Jane's busy saying that she spends most time flitting between our social media pages. Well, because again, it's our business as part of our work. So we are kind of on our own social media pages and TikTok and those sorts of things, which of course you need to be. If you run a business, then you need to be seeing how you're posting and how the content you're providing to people is being kind of accepted or not accepted, whichever way around, really. Okay, Nicole's just saying, to me, it's a way to check out. It's like a Star Trek game. Everyone was hooked to the video game. It is a bit like Tron and things, isn't it? Where everyone's kind of gone into the system. So it's almost like people are wired into it, really, kind of back to the Matrix days where kind of people are actually in the system. And I guess this is where Chen talks about this system, current system, really kind of two paths that divert. One goes down the tech AI route, and the other one goes down the kind of spiritual route, effectively. So he sort of forecast that our societies are basically at this divergent point, that the youngsters that are into tech will go down the tech route and then end up with kind of implants and things that are connecting them to the internet, and they'll become part of the internet, of course, because if you connect yourself to the internet with a device inside your skin or inside your body or somewhere, then you obviously get given a MAC address or an IP address, some sort of addressing system. So you're now part of the internet, really. And that seems to be the way that the tech companies are pushing people. because we've got all the wearables that people are wearing, their phones, updates to their phones, they've got glasses with cameras and things in, so they're kind of moving tech, onto you, but soon tech's going to be inside you for those that want to go that route. And I actually have seen kind of YouTube videos and things of people, I think it was in Sweden or somewhere, Netherlands or somewhere, that were quite advanced, and they've got chip implants in their arms so they can touch the car and the car door opens, they can touch the door to the house or their apartment and the door opens. So, the tech is actually inside people effectively, and you think that's never going to be a good ending, I'm sure, really. But anyway, that kind of takes us off that. So Matsuma's here. Good to see Matsumi. So she's talking about great subject, especially with AI. It's not only hard to find high vibe content, but also true. Well, that's a really good point, actually, because that is the other thing, that we've lost the calibration of truth. Because Jayne and I were sort of saying now that AI has become so good, you could be framed for something you didn't do. And I think we're seeing lots of kind of programs and films and kind of dramas whereby, the tech can put you somewhere, can mimic your voice, can say you did things. We were watching a film the other night, actually, and in that film, this guy basically effectively committed suicide and left his wife a suicide note, a voice note. But it turned out when the detectives were actually working through the voice note and they gave it to the tech guys, the tech guy said, no, this is AI. This isn't his voice. There's basically background noise, and basically the tech had kind of produced a voice that sounded just like the guy that basically committed suicide, but it wasn't, and that had been sent to his wife as in part of this drama and a film. So I know it's a drama and a film, but effectively that's where we've got to. We've got to point the tech to not only replicate your voice and make you say things you didn't say. Of course, the tech can also show you in a video doing things that you haven't done as well. So we've kind of lost the calibration of truth now. And when we see videos on social media, again, coming back to clickbait, I guess, and we see content on social media and on the internet generally, we don't know what's true anymore. We don't know if this content is AI generated because it's so good or whether it is the truth. And I guess that is quite a dangerous point, really, that our society has kind of got to this threshold whereby we've lost the ability to discern what's real and what's not. And you could say, in a way, it's good, because for those of us that are spiritual, which of course is everybody really, but those of us that are consciously spiritual, we've got to go turn back to our intuition to give us the yardstick. Do I think this is real or not? We've got to listen to the intuition, yes or no. Is the thought that's coming in, this is complete rubbish, it's AI, or is this, well, it could be real? And I guess we are going to get to that point where these two paths start to divert, basically, and go their separate ways. Spiritual people go down one path, working with guides, working with their intuition, connecting back to nature, and the other group of people go off down the kind of tech, robotics, AI, transhumanist sort of route, I guess, really. So I think we're at quite a kind of interesting point from a species perspective, because we are kind of changing and evolving our species effectively to accommodate a lot of this tech movement. And obviously it's the same concept with ChatGPT and lots of these AI kind of programs, not just algorithms. They need vast amounts of power. So these data centers need to be huge, basically processing all of this AI so that we can ask ChatGPT or Grok or something questions. But you can see a point that if these computer centers and data centers keep growing, which they are, then effectively they're going to use all of the power and electric. So the rest of us are going to be living on back to days of candles or little light bulbs or low LED light bulbs, because effectively the tech companies are going to basically, pull in all of the electrical resources to run these massive data centers that run our sort of civilization and social networks and things. So it's going to be quite interesting, I think, as we start to sort of move forward, really. Okay, so the algorithm now is more like a slot machine. The brain's addicted to the randomness, variable ratio reinforcement, random rewards. That's from quantum energy work. Thank you for that. That's a really good way of saying things, actually. The brain is addicted to the randomness. And I guess we know it's not random because we just get dross most of the time. So effectively, we know we're not going to get anything particularly interesting. We are just watching kind of continual feeds of things that we're expecting to get something good, but we don't get anything good. Okay, so let's get Chen to come in. Sorry, Tracy's just saying the video's freezing. I think there's been some big internet outages today. I know that when we woke up this morning, we had a Zoom call. Zoom wasn't working particularly well. And then we realized that Amazon Web Services in US East 1, I think, had been down or had a big outage. And Down Detector was kind of showing us that most of the big companies, the banking systems here, HMRC, the government websites were offline, the banks were offline. I think Zoom was down for a bit, PayPal wasn't working. So it's been definitely a big internet problem today, which of course actually kind of covers this same conversation, really, that if we kind of put all our eggs into the tech basket and we all rely on these digital IDs that they're pushing and the whole internet being available so that we can use our money, we can spend and we can buy things and we can buy petrol, we can surf social media, we can run our businesses, this whole IT infrastructure across the world needs to be up and working. And of course, it's probably a lot more delicate than we realised. As we know, there's a lot of undersea cables and things that run the internet between countries. So if there was to be a huge problem, if those cables get cut, which of course they did for Germany before, we had a few problems, then effectively the internet may not be quite as sustainable as we all like to think it is, really. But that's a whole different conversation. So I'll put that one on our list of conversations to have at some point. Okay, so let's get Chen in, see what he has to say about consciousness and clickbait, and then I'll catch you guys when I come back. I'm going to set my alarm for Chen. So I know he's waiting patiently. Actually, he's not that patient, to be fair, so he's probably not waiting patiently at all. Okay, so that's running. Just going to move the mic up. Okay, I'll hand over to Chen and I'll catch you folks in a while. Good day to all. Welcome to another week of our weekly Chen Chat. Obviously, this has been the Andrew chat up to now, so he's basically stolen the glory for the past 30 minutes or so. And I have been waiting patiently to have my turn to be able to engage with the narrative and provide a different perspective to a certain degree. But of course, the perspective effectively has been very well covered by young Andrew earlier. And of course, most of you that listen to these podcasts, most of you are consciously aware people, because most of you are spiritual people, and spiritual people are obviously walking the line between the normal societal choices. And we know that technology obviously is moving very fast forward, very quickly, but people on a spiritual path tend to be, as a profile, older people, people that have been through difficult life experiences and choices. Many of you have been through traumas, different traumas, and of course, some of those have been quite difficult, and most people are working through something. So if I look at the vibration of, let's say, 50 spiritual people that we could collect together and put in a room together, most of those people, 49 of them, I would see the vibrations of pain, frustration, trauma, anger, rage. All of those emotional frequencies would be baked into the etheric field of those people. And this, of course, is what pushes people generally onto a spiritual path, because it is the question, why am I here? Why is this happening to me? How do I manage a life around these people, whether it's families, friends, divorced, husbands, wives, children, parents. So everyone has a network, basically a family network. Even if you're not born into a family, and effectively you're moved or you're isolated, at some point you become part of a network of other people. And when you become part of a network of other people, be that a family or an arranged family or accommodated family, then of course these are when different things happen in your life. And of course these things that happen tailor your life experiences and they tailor your life choices. And this basically tailors your personality. So I'm sure all of you, if you look back now, 10 to 15 years, you're very different people today to the person that was walking the planet 10 or 15 years ago. And you're different because of the experiences that you've had, the challenges that you've had, the things you've needed to overcome. Everyone has to overcome strife and challenge. And this is one thing from our spiritual perspective, certainly from a spirit guide perspective. We walk with you every day. We hold your hand every day. We watch the pain, we watch the trauma, we watch the challenge that you have to go through. And we do salute you, and we are proud to hold your hand and take you to the next day. And we put that thought in your mind, just pick yourself up and take another step, just one more step, because we know that one more step will become 2 steps, and 2 steps will become 3, 4, 5 steps. And then we keep you going. And that is our job, to keep you on the path of the challenge of life. So when we think about the concept and the conversation really that we're having today around clickbait and the consciousness of what you do, then of course the 2 things do dovetail together, because we know that when we think about anyone that's assimilating information, your brain is basically having to work to decode what it sees. So let's go back to a time before computers. Before the computer or IT revolution, things were real. You couldn't be fooled. The mind couldn't be fooled. You'd have a television, or you'd have a radio, you'd have music, so you could listen to music, you would listen to the words of the song, and of course that would be decoded in your mind. So if you were listening to a positive song that was created with a positive energy on a positive frequency, the notes were positive, as they are assimilated into your energetic field, you would feel uplifted, you would feel positive, you would laugh, you would sing along, you would actually feel much better after you were singing to a positive song. If you're listening to a negative song with lots of loud negative frequencies, loud negative words, fear-based words, hate, anger, then of course that would create a completely different emotional response. You would be angry, in frustration, in the vibration of rage and negativity. So your emotional state would be changed by the type of music you listen to. And we know this. We know that heavy metal generally is all around skulls and negative words, negative conversations, negative constructs, really, loud, abrasive music. Not to say that the people that make the music aren't very talented, because of course they are, but the general demeanor of heavy metal music is negatively biased in the whole. Whereas if we thought about a classical orchestra, most classical musicians are well dressed, they're quite positive, the songs they're singing about are positive, the frequency of the music is very high and uplifting. So you do well to find yourself sat in a concert that was playing classical music, because your vibration will be pulled up to the pitch and the tone of the harmonics of the frequency of the instruments that we listen to. So we know that before computers, before IT, it was very easy to decide how you would feel. If you chose to play positive music, that your foot tapped along and it was positive wording, then you'd probably feel pretty high. If you listen to very negative music, anger-based music, then you would feel quite negative, very simple. And of course, then we look at the television, followed the same mythology to a certain degree. Things that you chose to watch, if you're watching a thriller or a horror film, you would know that your adrenaline would be changing based upon the content of the film and the subject line of the film. And of course, you may feel quite maybe afraid or slightly worried or slightly angry by the emotional changes because of the content. If you're watching a comedy, you know that you'd be laughing. So again, higher vibration. So it's very, very easy to choose as the receptive person in the audience of the old way of doing things. And then, of course, we get to the point that communication tools and computers and technology moves forward at such a rate of knots. And of course, the media companies know how to work the human brain. So they learned very quickly. Back in the 60s and 70s, there were lots of research done on how to manipulate people through imagery. And we know that obviously there is subliminal programming that, of course, is in use. We know that it's in use. It's been proven. It's always in use. So if your job is to get information to people and make them do something, then of course you create something based on the 2 normal things that we all know about, which effectively is fear or sex. So it's either a fear-based emotional response, so fear to make you buy something or make you do something or make you need or want something, or it's an emotional sexual response that again is pushing that button, because those two receptives are the strongest receptives in the human design. And we all know this, obviously it's very, very obvious. And of course the big corporations and the big companies that basically sell media, if you're selling products to people, you have to make people want something that they don't need. And that is the job of a media outlet. And of course that then turns into news too. So governments basically are behind news channels, and of course they want the audience to be receptive to the messaging that they're going to send out. So if they want you to do something, they've got to do the same. They've got to create a reward, same as you do with a dog. If you want a dog to be obedient, you need to feed the dog. So you give it treats, and you do that with repetition. And eventually the dog knows if it does a certain thing, it gets fed. And of course, that then continues. So this is where we've got to really with this concept of clickbait. It's kind of been evolving practice right back from the days of before computers to now. So, and what we've got to now is this overload of information. You could spend all day, literally 12 hours on your phone, flicking through posts. And your brain is looking at the imagery, basically decoding what it sees, not really reading anything. If you notice, when was the last time you read a paper? Not a paper as in a paper you picked up and sat on a chair and read, but a paper that a research person put together with some credible information about something of interest. Nobody reads papers anymore. So research papers are being created by creative people and doctorate level people, but they're not being assimilated by the general public. The general public now has a kind of time span, I probably would assume, of maybe 2 seconds. So if you show them an image or show them a video, you've probably got 2 seconds to basically appeal to that part of the brain that will actually keep them engaged before effectively they've moved on to the next thing. And if you watch people engaging in social media, what we see energetically, of course, is not images and videos as you would see them. We see energy. So we see a vibration come up on the phone. So if I was to watch young Andrew, if he's holding his phone, I see his energy signature, I see his vibratory frequency. And then, of course, as he's scrolling, effectively the information, the video, the audio tone, and the imagery pops up on the phone as a frequency of vibration. So if the video is a positive video, it's high frequency, we would see that as a high frequency. We would know that it was something quite positive, created with intent and integrity, and probably quite truthful. If we see that something comes up on the phone or the tablet or the computer that has a very low frequency, we would know that this is effectively some sort of clickbait, something that's been produced to deceive people. And the whole idea is that basically it's a headline or an image that's going to create either the response of fear or arousal, sexual arousal. So those two things basically are always behind the imagery that you see. And of course, you are then being programmed by what you see. So if you see an image of someone that's about to be eaten by a shark, as young Andrew suggested earlier, that obviously is going to press your fear response. And you're going to feel sorry for that person that's about to go through that experience. And that's what will make you click that particular piece of clickbait. But you probably wouldn't see the rest of that at all. You'll be taken off down a different path. And this is the whole concept, is that everything that you do is a conscious energetic signature. So as you're scrolling, you're allowing those frequencies to come into your field. So you're sat inside your etheric field, effectively, your bubble of light. You're broadcasting your light, your frequency. You pick your phone up or your tablet or your computer screen, and as you start to look at information, the frequency of that information is assimilated and imbued into your field. So the more you look at negative things, the more negative you feel, because of course your field and vibration starts to come down. So come the end of a few hours of mindless social media surfing with clickbait and such like, your conscious awareness has dropped, your vibrations dropped, your frequencies dropped, you probably feel fatigued and tired. So how many people do we think actually look at positive content all day that increases their vibratory frequency? Now, from our perspective, we don't really see any, because if you only looked at one piece of social media content, so you looked at one post or one piece of provided content, it's probably going to be negative. So, because of course this is the way these algorithms are working, which is what young Andrew was saying. They're working to create more content, more likes and more awareness, more interactions with people, but people don't interact with positive content. So the whole social media platforms have been designed as a very clever method of pulling your conscious awareness down, bringing your vibration down, because all they're doing is pushing negative, fear-based content. It's just that you don't see it that way. What you see is, if you're interested in something, you might get to see some of the informational posts that you're interested in. But if you think about today, if you wrote down every single image or post that you see tomorrow morning, so go through 10 posts, so use TikTok or Facebook or Instagram, go through 10 posts and write down post 1, positive or negative, post 2, positive or negative, post 3, positive or negative. And I wouldn't be surprised if by the time you get to the 10th post, you realize that the aggregate is negative. And if you're doing that all day long, hours on end, then that energy is coming into your field, bringing your vibration and your conscious awareness down. And this, of course, is the big challenge, is to find positive content and positive information. And then, of course, on top of clickbait and the conscious aspect of this conversation, we also have all of the negative control that's behind the scenes. So we have this concept of trolling, people that seem to have nothing to do with their day other than spend their time on other people's Facebook groups or pages or TikTok pages, providing their negative opinions of what they see. And I remember talking to you, Andrew, about this a few weeks ago, and he said, can you believe that people actually bother to join our groups, spiritual groups, with spiritual information that's generally aligned to be in high integrity and truthful that we provide, and they troll the groups and put negative things? And he said, why would they spend their time doing this? And we laughed together. And I said, well, it's one of two things, isn't it, young man? Either they're not real people, and this is yet another algorithm that's basically creating more negativity. Because, of course, if you're creating high vibration positive content as a content creator or an author, then the negative aspect needs to bring that frequency down. So you are going to be targeted by trolls, and those trolls could be people, real physical people that are being paid to sit behind a desk and find positive groups, join those groups, and then continually create negative, abusive, angry, threatening, or just diversive conversations with people. So they're there to create a reaction in a negative way to bring the frequency down of the content, the group, or the subject that you're talking about. Or, of course, if it's not people, then, of course, it's a computer algorithm itself being employed or deployed to do the same thing. And then if we look at the way that the social structures now work in all of your countries, all of your voting systems are all connected to and controlled by these social media companies. So it makes complete sense that if you want to win an election, you've got a choice. You're either going to try to appeal to real people, which means you have to put a lot of energy and time into real things, and you need to do the things you say you're going to do. Otherwise, you're held accountable energetically. Or, of course, you deploy a computer program that basically does it for you. So it creates content against the opposition. So effectively, think about a war. This is how wars work. You have normally two different groups, disparate groups that don't agree on something, and they both look to find ways to outdo the other one or to conquer the other one, in the same ways as we used to find with native species or native groups of people back in the day. If they had a disharmony or disagreement, then they would fight each other to decide who wins. The stronger person wins, writes the history of the event generally, and the stronger one that wins has the narrative, effectively. So the whole thing is controlled by the winner. So think about social media algorithms, the same things going on behind the scenes. Companies are using computer algorithms to troll positive groups, positive people, or if the governments don't want you to know information, of course, that's the same thing. They'll obviously use algorithms to basically change the narrative and keep moving the narrative away, so no one really knows what's true anymore. And therefore, of course, it's the best way to create the level of disinterest, because when you don't know what's true, and you see so much from one side, so much from the other side, eventually most people just turn off. So of course, this is the clever method of disengaging the general public and the user of these social media channels by algorithms that create this confrontation and this negative divide effectively. So it's worth bearing in mind. Of course, I did say to you, Andrew, well, it's very simple. You maintain and you police the social media channels that you have, such that when people put negative content in there that's basically untrue, you just delete it. You don't need to engage. You don't need to answer. You don't need to come up with any sort of conversation. You just merely delete the content because it's negative on the channel. If someone has a fair point to raise or is asking a question that needs to be answered, and that question comes from a place of truth and integrity, then of course that comment should be left on the channel because it's a positive comment, even though it may not be agreeing with the general subject or the conversation of the post that we're talking about. People should have the right to be able to ask questions, and also if you're running a social media channel, it's on you to be able to answer the questions and the content with integrity. And if you don't know the answer, you have to hold your hand up and say, it's an amazing question, thank you for providing this, but we don't know the answer particularly. What we feel is this could be the answer, but we don't actually have our opinion or an answer maybe from our perspective. So actually holding yourself to account is another thing that has to happen on these social media channels. People have to use their integrity and they have to speak their truth. And this, of course, is what's going wrong with all of these social media channels, really, is that they're becoming quite negative places to spend your time because there's so much negativity, and trying to find good, positive people that have a high vibration and are actually looking to better themselves on their own spiritual development path, or better the group that they're in, or better their families. These are very small numbers generally. And this, of course, is what you see, is that it seems to be everyone seems to be very quick to point out everybody else's errors and problems, but they don't look at themselves very often. And of course, most of the time now, more than likely, a lot of these accounts aren't even real accounts and not even real people. So you're engaging with a computer algorithm, a program that's designed to press your buttons to trigger you to create negative emotions and therefore to bring your frequency down. So it's a very interesting place to be for you all. And as young Andrew says, you have to be on these channels, these social media platforms, if you run businesses, and if you're trying to connect to an audience and you're trying to deliver positive content, then it is your job to do that. But it's also your job to walk that line in the sand of holding your integrity, holding your positivity, and not using clickbait and clickbait titles trying to get people's attention. So that if the title in the actual post or the piece of social media being delivered isn't relative to the content, then the context is completely wrong. And of course, that is a very low vibrational thing to do. And the content creators will move themselves into a negative energetic frequency by doing it, because of course they're deceiving people. No different to you walking down the street with a sign deceiving people. If you do that, you're picking up negative energy, negative karma, and lots of negative vibrational frequencies, because you know that what you're doing is deceptive. If however, you said something that you believed to be true that wasn't true, that's not deceptive because you didn't know, and that's totally okay from a spiritual perspective. But deceiving people from a known perspective is a very negative thing to do, and it picks up negative energy and, of course, negative karma energetically, and, of course, negative chords as well, because if people don't like you, people are having negative thoughts about you and the things that you say and do, then you're basically receiving negative strands of energy that are coming into your field that are going to drain your energy. And of course, this makes people that create negative content or negative clickbait from a conscious perspective, it makes them more and more negative because their vibration will come down and down and down. So you'll find that the people behind a lot of this content will be angry, negative people because of the type of content they're using in a deceptive way, which of course makes complete sense. Most people listening to this are spiritual people. You know how energy works. You know that what you focus on, effectively you connect to. If you're creating things that are negative from a deceptive perspective, then your frequency goes down, and therefore you attract more of that negative frequency into your field, so your life becomes more chaotic. So to move out of chaos, you need to move negative people and negative thinking, negative energy out of your field by focusing on positive things, listening to positive music, watching positive content. It's a very, very simple algorithm. So the spiritual algorithm compared to the computer algorithm is exceedingly simple. Positivity creates positivity, negativity creates negativity. And this is the way that we all should think in our everyday life. When we're on social media and we're doing things on the internet, or we're assimilating information, every time you click on clickbait that's negative, you're bringing your frequency down. And worse than that, of course, the fact that you've engaged with it means it will get pushed out to more people. So if you were clicking on and you were liking, you were commenting on more positive information, that positive information will be pushed out by the algorithm to more people. So you can see the whole thing, the whole computer algorithm could change overnight if everybody started to only click and engage with positive content. There would be much more positive content coming to your sphere of awareness, and therefore the content creators that are creating the positive content, or the helpful content, or the spiritual development content, would also get to see their stats rising very quickly, which would, of course, encourage them to create more content, to give away more meditations or free meditations. And this is why on Andrew's website, if you go to the website, you go to the audio section, I think it is, with podcasts, there are free meditations on there, past life meditations, protection meditations. So if you're interested in doing meditations that keep your field clear, go to the website, andy-porter.co.uk. We've spent years and years building that website. Lots of the contents come directly from myself, Chen, and on there are free meditations that you can download or you can do on a daily basis. And this is where we want things to be. We want to be in a place that we're only providing positive energy, positive content to people, and we disengage with everything that's negative. The negative people get removed from the groups, negative people, negative energy gets deleted and removed. So we're only maintaining, we'd rather have 10 followers that are positive than 10,000 that are negative, because 10,000 negative followers will put our energy and Andrew's frequency and Jayne's frequency down. So they have been instructed to only engage with positive content, positive people, positive conversations. And this is how we maintain our own boundary from a spiritual perspective too. So I think from my perspective, that probably brings us to an end, certainly from my part of this conversation around clickbait, how clickbait works from a spiritual perspective, and the fact that the more you click the clickbait, the more negative you see, the less you should be clicking, and you need to go and find positive content, type in positive searches, only look for positive things, and primarily only engage with positive content. So next time you do a like, next time you share or you comment on someone's post, only do it on the positive ones, because those positive ones will get pushed to more people. And this is what we're looking to do. So thank you for your time, your information, and we will look forward, or I will look forward, of course, again to next week's Chen Chat. So I will say good day for now. Okay, so I think I'm back. So Chen's on time, which is good. What was his timer? He had 2 minutes left. Oh, right, okay. It's unusual. Chen had 2 minutes left and stopped talking. 2 minutes 32, actually. Okay, cool. Okay, well, so hopefully you guys have enjoyed the Chen opinion of things. I'll probably listen to this back actually tomorrow to see what he did have to say, because again, I never get to know really until the next day generally, if I can listen. But hopefully you've enjoyed the chat. If you've got any questions, any information, or you want a conversation, obviously head over to our social media places or drop us an email, contact@andy-porter.co.uk. Again, we've got a new social media page, so we're moving away from the Andrew Surgeon profile to the Andy Porter Psychic Surgeon page. So if you haven't already liked us and followed us, go and like and follow on that page. And obviously we're moving people over, so we're looking to move all our content across basically and only update that page. And then of course we've got the Chen page that we continue to update with Chen's information. and all things Chen. So if you're not on that one, go over and follow that page as well. Other than that, I've got a TikTok channel that we're starting to work with because we realise that TikTok is quite a big thing, and we're trying to navigate the TikTok world, of which Bri, my daughter, is trying to help us with because she's younger than us, so she understands TikTok, whereas to me, it seems like a randomly Wild West place to spend your time, really, when we're talking about clickbait and just random videos and random things moving up. But I suppose we'll probably to get to grips with what we're supposed to be doing on there. And again, Chen's very keen for us to be on all these platforms, and we've got podcasts on Apple, Amazon, Spotify, all the other stuff, really. So all of our information, plus YouTube, of course, is everywhere. So if you're looking for all things us and Chen, then it should be very easy to find. And we'll look forward to catching you again next week. Okay, folks, I'll say good day for now, and we'll see you again next week. Bye-bye.